and welcome to another virtual event of the Women's Council on Energy and the Environment, WCEE. I am Barbara Tyran, President of WCEE, and it is my pleasure to introduce Paulette Pidcock, a respected executive leadership coach. Paulette is the founder and president of Pidcock Coaching Partners. She has over 35 years of corporate energy government relations strategy experience. And it was actually her love of policy that brought her back to her network, showing that we can and do carry forward in our community, serving our community and others. Paulette is a member of the International Coaching Federation. She received her Georgetown Certified Leadership Coach certificate in 2014 and was EQ certified in 2019. Paulette is going to speak to us today on resilient leaders embody emotional intelligence. This is based on the fact that since becoming certified, Paulette has focused on leadership development around the world, including the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Central Eurasia, and working with teams and individuals in a holistic and compassionate style. Paulette would like to have today's session be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A button on your screen. And with that, we'll get started and I'll turn it over to Paulette Pidcock. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, so much. This is really an honor for me to be back with the energy community, for which I spent so many years. I'm thrilled to be presenting a topic that is so important, particularly at this point in time. And it's about the topic of, resilient leaders and how we embody emotional intelligence. I'm going to be covering a lot of material today, and I'm going to be doing it at a fairly high level. So I can't go into too much depth, but you certainly, and I'll have my contact page up at the end. Get back in touch with me if you have further questions or want something explained more. So with that, let's begin. And can you see my slides? You probably can't. I don't know what happened, Barbara, but we'll resume. So we have...
We're good, Paulette.
Okay, great. So I'm not sure if you heard my appreciation at the beginning, but I'll quickly go through that. I just want to thank Barbara and WCEE for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you and with this energy community. This is a topic of great importance, the resilient leaders and embodying emotional intelligence. It's something that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to be covering quite a bit of material at a high level. We really don't have the time to go and delve into the all the details of everything. So with that, we're going to be in what we call a VUCA world for quite a while. And you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, the volatile, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguous world in which we live. See, from the global pandemic to Black Lives Matter to the economic crisis, we're really struggling. So I'm curious, and we're going to be doing the chat, as to how are you feeling today? Those of you that are on the call. So if you could just enter into the chat box how you're feeling. Are you anxious? Are you calm? Just, and Barbara's going to read off as you enter.
So I'm in the chat function, Paulette, and waiting for some words to come in as to how everyone is feeling today.
Okay.
Anxious and overwhelmed for sure. Trying to stay optimistic and appreciate silver linings. Bored. Another anxious. Energized and grateful this afternoon.
That's right.
Overwhelmed. Exhausted. Uncertain about the future, but supported by friends and family. Perpetually tired. angry, feeling on hold, tired and nervous, calm but concerned given the 5 million and rising who are COVID positive.
Right. Well, thank you all for that input. I really appreciate it. It's a very anxious time. So this is a quote that I saw when I was doing some of my research, and it actually was published about 2 years ago. And in the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they are about brains, but in the future, they'll be about the heart. And actually the future is now. During this last 4 or 5 months, there have been numerous articles published in Korn Ferry and Deloitte and others about the importance of heart and head during this time of crisis. So I thought this is just a great time, because I've always felt emotional intelligence was so important, to be bringing this to a broader audience, and to say that it's okay to have concerns about people who we work with, our employees first, over our task and our projects and our deadlines. So this is a very appropriate quote for today. So today, we're with the resilient leaders. What I want to do is to have an intention, as you can see here. My intention for this next hour or so is to enable a greater awareness that empowers you to lead with your best self for your family, for your colleagues, for your community, and for the world. So then I ask you, what is your intention? Is your intention to receive as much as you possibly can from this topic? And are you going to do it with good listening skills and with the learner's mind? I just put that challenge out to you. So in the lower right-hand corner, you see the different dimensions of resilience. And the three there, the physical, the mental, and the emotional, with really joining at the heart. We're going to be focusing on the emotional aspect of resilience. Today's agenda is to explore resilience. What does that mean? Emotional intelligence, and we're going to be looking at just one very important component, but just one of the skill set for emotional intelligence, and that's self-awareness. And within the self-awareness, we're looking at emotions, triggers, empathy, talk for a second or two about assessment, and then leave time for reflection and questions. And so you'll see in the next to this is the 7 building blocks: mental and emotional well-being, physical health and well-being, etc. Again, what we will be doing is just really spending more time on the values and the emotional part of this. This is taken from work that Deloitte has done, as I mentioned, back in March. And I just thought this was so important. It's in the crucible of crisis. Resilient leaders are defined first by who they are. Genuinely and sincerely empathetic, walking compassionately in the shoes of others, while at the same time, you still have to use your head to make and take a hard, rational line to protect financial performance during a crisis. So let's spend another few minutes. Resilience is basically the human capacity for us to meet adversity. I mean, we're doing that on a day-to-day basis. And to recover, and by recovering, it's not going to be like what it was before, but it's recovering by moving through the crisis and living life as fully as we can, coming out stronger but we'll never be the same. So, just think about resilience as what happens to us becomes a part of us. It's a good thing. Think of it as that. Resilient people do not bounce back, but they find healthy ways to integrate themselves back into their lives. So one of the things that I want to mention, this is for you to do sometime on your own. One of the exercises we do in leadership development programs, I mean, from Harvard on, to take time to do what we call Lifeline. Take 20 points in your life. Start at childhood, though. Start way back, because so much of this starts in childhood. And then what were the 10 good times? What were the 10 very challenging times? And then plot that out and take time to look at what got you through that time period. What were the values? I mean, what you're doing is you're shaping yourself in a resilient way. And that is so important. So I just offer that suggestion to you. So the 5 qualities of resilient leaders that Deloitte had noted in that particular study was that the center of it was designed from the heart and the head. Serve the heart of your organization, your purpose, and your societal obligations, while simultaneously making hard decisions to protect financial viability. So in that other quote, we had, who are you? And then the other part of this is what you do and how you do it. So the other 4 qualities is mission, stabilize today to spark innovation tomorrow, speed over elegance, decisive action with courage, own your narrative, compelling future and path forward, and embrace the long view, stay focused to instill confidence. I like this quote. It's from Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and Man's Search for Meaning book, and he's written numerous books. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Resilience is built upon our core values. This is just something that is, as someone who specializes in values-based leadership, this is so important that you understand what your value system is, that you understand and connect to your core values. When you do that Lifeline exercise that I suggested, and you go and you look at what got you through those times, it's going to be your value system. It helps you find your inner strength, coping and moving through your challenges, and you'll be able to recover from setbacks with more competence, optimism, and flexibility. You're going to find more meaning and growing from it. And when I started doing more of my work around values, I'm thinking, I never had leadership work. And, I don't know if I really ever sat down to figure out what my values are, but fortunately, I lived my values. When you come to that crossroad, you will make the decision, you should be making your decision on your set of core values. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, from Friedrich Nietzsche. So I really encourage you, if you don't know your values, to spend some time thinking through what is important. So this is one of the visual models on emotional intelligence. We're going to, after I go through this, we'll do a poll. And I want to just point out what are some of the skills that can be learned in emotional intelligence. So self-awareness is where we're going to be focusing. It is the basis of all of this. It recognizes our emotions and their impact on others. We have to do this. If you are in any line of work, if you're a lobbyist or you are trying to get your policy perspective accepted, you have to be aware of others and how you play out in that whole environment. Empathy understands how others are feeling. Motivation focuses on internal growth. Self-regulation, which is critical, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that, is properly expresses and regulates emotions. and then social skills, which successfully interacts and navigates social situations. So I'm going to ask Hannah to bring up the poll and have people fill this out. And then be sure, once you fill it out, to submit. And then we'll hear what we find. Thank you. Maybe give another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so what I'm seeing is, how good am I at identifying? 50% say good, 50% say very good. How good am I at identifying emotional swings in myself? 9% poor, 59% good, 32% very good. Barbara, can you read the rest? Because I can't scroll on it.
Sure, Paulette, I'd be happy to. Question number 3 is, how well do I know why I have certain feelings? 14% are poor, 59% are good, and 27% are very good. And the 4th and final question is, how good am I at finding the right word or words to use to express my feelings? 14% said poor, 50% said good, and 36% said very good.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for filling out this poll. It's very interesting. It's quite a mix. And I am glad that I'm here presenting this to give you an idea of how you can enhance and improve your emotional intelligence skills so that you can move forward. So, Hannah, I don't know if you can take this off my screen. Thank you. So I just want to say to those that rated themselves very good in one or all of those questions, sometimes, and I think that that's great, that we feel that way, that we're very good in some of these things. I also commend you to be thinking about how you can help others. If you have colleagues, if you have employees, you have others that work with you and around you, it's really a responsibility for all of us to give back, and to give back through coaching, helping people who need extra help. You don't always have the ability to be with a coach, but if you are pretty good at these things, help others. It'll really be a gift that you're giving to others. And also, not on ending on a bad note, but oftentimes we have to be very careful of overusing or abusing those skills that we think we're very good in, because there can be some things that we need to watch as well. So thank you again. This is Daniel Goleman's model. It's just more of what we've been talking about as you go across the first row: personal competence, self-awareness, everything that's involved in self-awareness. You can read that. Self-management, getting along well with others. So you've got the recognition, which is where we're going to go after this. And then the regulation, critical. Why am I having triggers, and what can I do about them? And then social competence, again, in the line of work you're in, all of this is so very important. Social awareness, relationship management. So let's start with self-awareness. You can see the secret to our personal and professional success: recognizes our emotions and their impact on others, builds habits through practices of mindfulness. And we'll be reviewing more of the neuroscience behind the emotions and the triggers, which are so critical to our self-awareness. So we'll be delving deeper into that. But I cannot repeat this enough. Self-awareness is the secret to all of our success as a human being, basically. So emotions determine the quality of our lives. They occur in every relationship we care about. They can save our lives and they can cause real damage. So we'll talk about emotions, and then we'll really spend some time on triggers. This is a wheel of emotions, as you can read. And this was done by a psychologist, Robert Pidcock. And when I first saw this, it was kind of overwhelming. And I felt that, but looking at it, it's primary emotions. These primary emotions are wired in our brain at the time of birth. So to look at this, go to the yellow, and you see where in the middle circle you have joy. And as you go down to ecstasy, that's the intensity of the emotion. The opposite of joy is the blue petal, which is sadness. And you'll see them as I've listed: joy, sadness, and then going to clockwise: trust, disgust, fear, anger, surprise, anticipation, and then sadness. Just going around. So we have secondary emotions. That is emotion to an emotion. And if you look at where we have joy and anticipation, it gives you optimism. And so if you take anticipation and anger, it's going to be aggressiveness. Most people have a difficult time really understanding the emotions. They'll just go maybe with the primary, but they're not clear on what's going on beneath all of that. So with the brain, we're going to do a little bit of neuroscience here. The brain is a lot of neuroplasticity with the brain. Originally, researchers thought that we stopped growing in our 20s in our brain. Well, it goes on for as long as we're alive. But think of this very simply as the prefrontal cortex. That is the executive function. That's where so much of our regulation and morality, intuition, empathy are housed. On the other side of the slide, you see the limbic brain, which is situated beneath the cerebral cortex and above the brainstem, just to give you a sense of location, if you will. But that's where the fight, flight, freeze, stress response exists. It's our emotions live there in the amygdala and in the limbic brain. And it's oftentimes called the reptile brain, because years ago, centuries ago, a long time ago, there was a reason to have this fight, flight. There still is today, it's just different. We don't have the fear of animals after us and that sort of thing, but that's where the emotions are registered. So going to a little bit deeper here, you see where the amygdala is what we're going to be talking about. And so I'm going to be using amygdala hijack. And this is a good thing to kind of keep in your mind, because it is what is happening, so you have an understanding. So the amygdala is an almond-shaped structure in the limbic brain. It stores and processes our emotions. It recognizes potential threats. So when we have an amygdala hijack, we have biological changes are occurring. We have something that is a stimulus that causes a reaction in that part of our brain. So you go into a fight or flight response is activated. And what happens is you are actually disconnecting from the neocortex. So you actually have a space of seconds, basically, where you're hijacked. And what you need to do in your self-awareness is to learn to regulate some of your emotions here and not act in a way that you will be sorry. Don't send that email that you're busy writing back to that person. Give yourself some time, because it takes time for the neocortex to reconnect. And that's where the regulation takes place. This is a brain function. This is what happens. So here in this slide, you see the amygdala is responsible for the response and memory of emotions, especially fear. This part of our brain stores memories from our childhood about our emotions. And whenever it is hijacked, you have the hormones, everything going off, because what we now are going to be seeing is that it shows up in a somatic way. It is showing up physically, you can see it. This is our feeling of that emotion. So you have dilated pupils, you can have flushed skin, rapid heartbeat, dry mouth. I mean, I would venture to say we've all been there. We've all gone through these kinds of times. So some of you may remember or heard about John McEnroe and his antics on the tennis court, always having an amygdala hijack because he wasn't happy with the call, and here he is at Wimbledon, angrily fighting with the umpire. Here you have something closer to home, which is angry bosses. What is causing the anger? That's what we want to find out, and that's where you see the word on the right, triggers. And I really can't say this enough, that if you learn anything from today's discussion, try and figure out what your triggers are. When you are angry, and you'll see this more in another slide, there's a lot of stuff going on that we're labeling anger. We need to figure out why. And that's why triggers. I have been unraveling triggers, I mean, up till my stage of life. All the time I'm thinking, oh my God, now I know why I acted the way I did, because I recognized something that was a stimulus for me. And you can regulate that. It is up to you to do that. So this is a picture that I'm going to use from two perspectives, but what can you do? So an emotional trigger alerts us to our own mental health. It enables greater self-awareness. It manages our emotions. You don't want our emotions to control us. We need to control our emotions. And to practice mindfulness. So whenever we have that amygdala hijack, if you are self-aware, and hopefully you will through your skill practices, that you will recognize what's happening, and you'll just stop, take a pause, take a breath, do some breathing. And this one example is what's called box breathing, which a lot of people suggest is a good exercise to get familiar with. So there's all kinds of different mindfulness exercises. So I leave that to you, but know that you need to take some time out. So looking at this from a different perspective, so we're looking at this young man on the phone. I mean, we're obviously going to see something. We're going to make up our story. We're going to say, oh, he's probably angry at his girlfriend or his mother or his father, whatever, a friend. So he is really, I mean, we just go on with our stories. We do that all the time. So you just think about it with the people you work with. Think about it with your children and your partner, your spouse. Have a curiosity about, why are you reacting that way? Maybe it's not what I assumed was the case. And boy, we do that with those people that are closest to us in the workplace and at home. We will make up stories and we will assume that they're reacting. You pass them in the hallway at work and they don't respond to something, and it's all of a sudden, they don't like me. Well, maybe they didn't even notice you because they were caught up in some emotional struggle that they had just previous to meeting up with you. Please remember this, just always be curious. You may have seen this a number of times. So the iceberg, the tip is showing above the surface. And actually what we see and what we hear in this case, words, tonality of those words, body language, gestures. But so much of it is in the deep structure underneath. You have our beliefs, our values, our biases, prejudices, experiences, fears, dreams, feelings. That is the core of who we are, really, is underneath. So I want to read this quote from Susan David, who's written a good book on emotional agility. So our raw feelings can be the messengers we need to teach us things about ourselves and can prompt insights into important life directions. So if somebody asks you, gee, how are you feeling? Most of the time, if not all the time, you're going to say, I'm fine. We really don't share with what is really going on because maybe we don't even quite understand it. But we do know that something is happening. So if you are self-aware enough, be curious about what is going on. Also, if you're with someone else, a colleague, your spouse, again, your children, I'm curious, can you tell me why you might be so angry? No, I'm just angry. Well, be curious and listen. Listen. If you ask them, well, how are you feeling? You've asked a question. What you need to do is to shut up and listen. Do the pause and wait for them to answer. How many times do we answer our own questions? We don't give the other person. It takes time to process. And what they're going to say really won't be the whole story. What I often say is listen for the story, not to the story. But if you get good at this, what you're going to learn is through your listening, you're going to be asking questions by being curious. So you tell me that, a little bit more about that anger. How does it feel? And just, you can keep digging and it's amazing. They eventually get to what's really bothering them. So you have helped them unravel that very question. It takes practice, but it's really very worthwhile. And you should be doing that at work. You should be doing that at home. So the anger iceberg, this is a little bit more into the anger iceberg, and the range of emotions. You see the word angry. Well, then look under the surface. This is how anger works. Often when we are angry, there are other emotions hidden under the surface. You could be overwhelmed and angry because you're overwhelmed. You could be annoyed, shamed, embarrassed, any number of words that are under the surface. But unless you stop and take time to figure this out, you're not going to get very good at understanding yourself. So to review some of this, your amygdala hijack happens, your body is experiencing a threat. Doesn't matter if it's a life or death situation, it's an emotional situation. So at the workplace, how easily are you triggered by these 5 common culprits of the amygdala hijack? So let's use this as another chat opportunity. Just enter into the chat which of these, or maybe all of them, are things that you find yourself being upset. If you're talking with a friend, you say, I am angry because of being treated unfairly. Whatever it is, just give yourself time to think, but enter in what you're thinking and look forward to your input. So if your amygdala could speak, what would it be saying when triggered? What are some of those triggers for you? Are we having some people enter some of their feelings? Great, I see that number going up now.
Yeah, we've got a few things. We have a number of people who have said all of it, and being unappreciated and not listened to. Another one said also said being unappreciated, but also not being included. I know I've felt that before. I'm another entry was, I'm most often triggered by the feeling you are not listened to or heard. Another entry is saying they've experienced all of them at work and sometimes more than one at once. Being interrupted and feeling dismissed. Response becoming more assertive and defensive as a sort of initial response. Overlooked, not appreciated, potentially publicly shamed for making a mistake. That's a hard one.
Yeah. Those are great. Thank you for that feedback. So,
Paulette, can you hear me just a second? I think you got stuck on mute. So if you could click unmute on your side. I don't know. It's not letting me unmute. Paulette, can you please take a quick look at your computer and on the bottom of your Zoom and click the speaker button, the unmute button? There we go. You're all set. Sorry about that.
See, I have to get out of my slides.
Okay. Well, now we still see your slides, so you can play again, and it's all set. Thank you. I apologize.
So that just happens. I mean, I don't touch anything. Okay. So. All right. I'm going to quickly do this. Emotions and feelings. Resilient leaders are connected to their bodies, and when emotion knocks, they feel it and pay attention. Emotions are associated with bodily reactions that are activated through transmitters and hormones released by the brain. We call emotions feelings because we feel them in our bodies. We have a physiological response to emotions. The conscious experience, our feelings are the conscious experience of emotional reactions sparked by emotions and shaped by personal experiences, beliefs, memories, and thoughts linked to that particular emotion. The side product of your brain perceiving an emotion and assigning a certain meaning to it. There's a lot going on. So be curious, ask questions of yourself. If your prefrontal cortex could speak, what would it be saying when triggered? So these are a set of questions that you can be asking yourself. Are you sure that's how they feel when you're thinking about your spouse and we're making up a story about the comment that he or she made? Could you have misunderstood the situation? Sure, you could have. Are there any alternative explanations that might be worth considering? Could you be jumping to conclusions? Probably. Will it necessarily turn out that way that you're anticipating? And is the worst case that you're worried about likely to happen? Triggers ignite an emotional hijack in your brain. Have a plan and take back control. First step towards emotional balance. We are human, and so we all are negatively affected by triggers. It is important to be able to bounce back. That's resiliency when knocked down. another Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. It's a quote by Maya Angelou, who I'm sure many of you have heard. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So this just leads us right into empathy. Empathy is feeling with people. So this is something for you to do in your own time and journal. This is something we do in our programs. Think about those people that you consider a compassionate and resilient leader, someone that you want to work with, someone that you want to follow, and why do you respect them? And, you know, I'm sure many of these words will pop up for you. They're compassionate, they're authentic, they're listening with the heart. So this is important. Can never say enough about having empathy. Empathy and empathetic response. I get it, I feel with you. You don't necessarily have to experience the same experience, but you feel with them. Sympathy response, which we don't want to be doing, is I feel sorry for you. Gee, oh, you poor thing. If you think that's bad, well, just name it, whatever it is. Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. So in the workplace, empathy matters. And leaders can show empathy by some of these following points. The willingness to help employees with personal problems. Work and personal life is more intertwined like it's never been. And in a crisis situation, that will be what happens. Recognize signs of overwork before burnout. Each week, take a few minutes to check in with team members. Show sincere interest in the needs and hopes of others. Work to understand the unique needs, strengths of each team member. Show compassion when others disclose a personal loss. This is empathy. Empathy is a tool that leaders can use to establish connection and trust with those they lead. Without it, you don't have it. This is a similar model to what we discussed before. I just have it up here because it shows empathy as being the critical and the core part of the whole emotional intelligence model. Resilient leaders. Why is it important to develop emotional intelligence skills? Because it's fundamental to understanding what will lead you to flourish. And hopefully you have that as something you aspire to. We as humans tend to be highly emotional and social creatures. I know I, for one, have always been somebody who's led from my heart. I can get things done, I can be task-oriented, but I don't lead with my task and my goals. I lead with, first of all, how does it sit with me, my values, and in my heart. Being emotionally intelligent will boost your connection and performance at work. If you already have that, just think and be grateful that you have it. If you don't, you can work on it. Improve your communication skills. There are so many times, if you would have known what triggered you, if you had the courage to communicate it, you would not be in the particular situation that you're in. I am a testament to that throughout my life, never having courage to address things when I should have addressed them. So I really, and I you know, in a lot of my leadership development learning groups and so on, we can get pretty vulnerable with each other. So having a high level of emotional intelligence can make you successful in just about every aspect of your life. What more do you want? People with high emotional intelligence are also generally able to pick themselves up when they fall. So as I mentioned at the beginning, my commitment was to present this material to you and to give you, you know, some awareness of what you can be doing. what I ask is, what is one commitment that you will make to improve your emotional intelligence as a resilient leader? Perhaps that's you. Perhaps you feel that you're pretty good at these things. We can always learn. I just caution you, we can always learn. That's that learner's mind, not the knower's mind. But if you do feel that way, then again, as I mentioned earlier, we have a responsibility to give back. We all are unique. We all have gifts and strengths. Share those with others. Share them with people on your team, with your family, your kids. Emotional intelligence is really being focused in on schools, elementary schools. Yale has a big program on that these days. So you can be working with your children on this. So give back. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. This goes way back to Socrates. So this is just one example of an assessment that we do. It's called the EQI assessment. I just want to show you that we've got 5 components, but within those 5 components, there's at least 3 subcomponents in each. So you really get down into a really healthy and good self-assessment. And it looks at things like stress management, decision-making, and so on. Here's an example of what the score looks like, and you get a report around that. This has been very helpful to me. So I want to leave you with another quote on self-awareness. If you understand your own feelings, you get a really good and great handle on how you're going to interact and perform with others. So one of the first starting points is, what's going on inside of me? How we live is what makes us real. So with that, any reflections and questions? In fact, even if you don't have questions, if you could just put your thoughts, reflections into the chat box, that would be very helpful. What you felt was one of your biggest takeaways from today's talk. It helps give me insight into what's important to other professionals. Remember also that women will have more capability in the area of emotional intelligence. It's just the way we're built. And you can be more resilient through taking time, reflecting, and building your skills. So with that, if there's any questions, and this is my contact page with my telephone number, my email address, and LinkedIn website. I'm proud to be in the throes of redesigning my website, because the website that's existing now is about 5 years old, and Barbara's been walking with me and holding my hand on some of this. So we're pretty close. Hopefully by the end of this month, I will have a new redesigned website to reflect what I'm doing these days and some updated pictures. Anyway, thank you. It's all yours, Barbara.
Thank you. Also, we've gotten a question about triggers. Do you think women are more adept at identifying triggers than men?
Yes, I do. And one example of a trigger for me that goes right to this is that I was co-facilitating back about 5 years ago with a white male in my age range. We had done some work for a couple days preparing for our learning group. This is in one of these domestic leadership programs. But once we started our learning group, we had 5 guys and 1 woman in that group. And my co-facilitator, even after we agreed, just once he started, he just sucked up all the air in the room. It was like I wasn't even there. And I had, I found myself losing energy, and I sort of went back in my chair, and then I realized, no, I need to be at the table, and you need to keep your energy going. But when we reported, and we talked about it, I did have a crucial conversation with him. We did talk about it in our group. The one woman said, Paulette, I knew that you were upset because she could see it in my body and she could see the somatics of it. But the guy said, what? Yeah, you were upset about that? They don't have well, I shouldn't say this. I'm sure there are a lot of men who do have this depth of understanding and emotions. And I should say that my brother is one of them. But yes, I do. But we still need to do a lot of work because it took me a couple years to realize what my trigger was also. It was co-facilitating with a white male in my age range with whom, not him specifically, I had to claw and to work. I've been in the lobbying world since the late 70s. It's a long time. And we had to go through a lot, as you all still do. So I know now I am not going to allow myself to be triggered. That's why I say, if you think you're really good at this, you probably are, but you can be better.
Thank you. One participant acknowledged your need for courage and how important that is in having these crucial conversations and not letting things slide. Would you like to address the topic of courage?
Courage, thank you for the question. What's happening when we realize we have to have a conversation is that we're triggered. Our emotions are getting the best of us. And I can remember thinking, oh, darn it, I have to have this conversation. I don't want to have a conversation. But you start sitting with that for a couple of days, you better realize that you need to have that conversation. And so you have to gather your courage, because otherwise you're going to be walking around with, this, which may be unseen by others, but you will feel the weight on your shoulders. You have to have the courage to address it with that person, and you have to understand your role in that. Is that person, just as I said to my co-facilitator, I have to have a conversation with you. This took courage for me. And I said, I use the I pronoun. You don't use the you pronoun because it puts the other person on the defense. And we all do that. So your courage means that you have to recognize that you're the one that has to have the conversation. You may find out that your assumptions in your story were completely off base. He had no clue of the impact he had. He had so little emotional intelligence that he didn't pick up on the cues. And it's so hard in a virtual situation. I can't pick up the cues if somebody is, sleeping or really engaged in the conversation, but you will find that courage. It's there because you know you have to do it. And please do it. Do it in your personal life and do it in your work life.
Thank you, Paulette. We're quickly running out of time, but there's another question here in our chat box that I know you can address very capably, and it seems to me it's an important one, which is, how would you suggest we work successfully with a leader that lacks empathy?
The situation, unfortunately, is that there are a lot of leaders who are not values-based, empathetic people. You cannot change people. It is not your role to change people. What your role is to show your gift and try to manage the situation and be authentic. If that doesn't work, and if it's a colleague, have that conversation. I just want you to know that this is the impact that I am having because you speak the way you speak. And I'm curious. This is where your curiosity and your questions. I'm curious if what I'm thinking is the right assumption, that you really, whatever it is, don't like me, or you really don't value my input. Can you help me understand that? So that's how I would approach that. And one exercise to do, I think I mentioned that earlier, is think about leaders that you respect and ask yourself why. It's going to be from, one of those is, and I did mention that from the empathy slide. empathy really is a skill that most people need to work on. So maybe helping that person in a way that presents a graceful situation.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I want to thank Paulette for an outstanding presentation and incredible insights that I'm sure will benefit all of us going forward. I'd also like to thank WCEE Vice President Hannah Vizcarra and our Special Events Administrator Robin Robinson for all their technical support. Apologize for any technical difficulties we had and appreciate your patience, everyone, for navigating through that with us. Please note that we do have upcoming virtual WCEE events, including on this Thursday for a job seekers coffee chat at 10 a.m. and next Tuesday, also at 10 a.m., a meet and greet for WCEE's new members. Thank you again, everyone, for joining and for your continuing support of WCEE. As you know, our virtual programming is free of charge these days, but the operating costs do continue, and we welcome all donations on the WCEE website. Thank you so much again, Paulette, and to our audience, thank you for your participation and support, and I'm wishing everyone a safe and very healthy rest of your week and summer. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.